Hello everyone and welcome back to another math video. In this video we are going to talk about exponent rules. So we're going to start with our first rule. If I have some number, I'll just call it a, raised to the 0. That's going to reduce to the number 1. So for instance, if I have like 3 to the 0, that's going to be equal to 1. Or if I have 1/3 raised to the 0, that's going to be equal to 1. Anything raised to the 0 power except 0 is 1. Second one, if I have a times b to some power, that's the same thing as a to the power times b to the power. So for instance, if I have 2 times x raised to the 3rd, that's the same thing as 2 to the 3rd times x to the 3rd. And then we would want to simplify that. 2 to the 3rd is the same thing as multiplying 2 3 times. So that's going to be equal to 8. So this is going to be 8 times x to the 3rd. Okay, similarly, if I have a divided b to a power, that's the same thing as a to the power divided by b to the power. So for instance, if I have 2/3 raised to the 4th, then that's the same thing as 2 to the 4th over 3 to the 4th. And then we would want to simplify that. 2 to the 4th is 2 multiplied by itself 4 times. 16. 3 to the 4th is 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. So 3 multiplied by itself 4 times, which is 81. So if I have a to a power times a to another power, notice these are multiplied. When I'm multiplying, I have the same base. I'm going to add those exponents together. So this is going to be a to the m plus n. For example, if I have x squared times x cubed, that reduces the x to the 5th. I would add those exponents together. So what if I have a to the m over a to the n? Well, when we divide and we have the same base, we're going to subtract the exponents. And notice it's going to be that top exponent of m minus the bottom exponent of n. For instance, if I have x to the 7th over x squared, that's x to the 7 minus 2, which is x to the 5th. The next exponent rule is going to deal with negative exponents. Let's say we have a to the negative p. Negative exponent just means it's in the wrong place. If the negative exponent's in the numerator, we're going to move it to the denominator to make it a positive exponent. So this is 1 over a to the p. Or if the negative exponent is already in the denominator, then we're going to move it to the numerator to make it a positive exponent. So for instance, let's say we have 2 times x to the negative 3. The exponent of negative 3 is on the x, so that term needs to move to the denominator. So the 2 is going to stay at the top, and I'm going to move that x cubed to the bottom. Okay, another example. Let's say we have 5 over x to the negative 4. Okay, because that x to the negative 4 has a negative exponent in the bottom, we're just going to move it to the top. So the 5 is going to stay in the numerator, but now that x term is going to move to the numerator to give us a 5x to the 4th. So let's look at a few examples. First one, say we want to simplify x cubed times x to the 5th. When we multiply and we have the same base, we're going to add the exponents together. So this is going to be the same thing as x to the 8th. Example 2, we have 3x squared times 4x to the 5th. I'm going to multiply my numbers. 3 times 4 is going to be 12. And then when I multiply and I have the same base, I'm going to add those exponents together. So this is going to end up being x to the 7th. So take a minute, try the next one, see if you can come up with the answer. So in this one, we have 2x to the 6th times 5x squared. So that's going to be a 10x to the 8th. We're going to multiply the numbers. And then when we multiply the variables together, we're going to add the exponents because the variables are the same base x. The next one, we have x to the 7th over x cubed. When we divide and we have the same base, we're going to subtract the exponents. And remember, it's going to be your top exponent minus your bottom exponent. So this is going to reduce to x to the 4th. I'll look at my next one. I have 12x to the 6th over 4x squared. So I'm going to start by simplifying those numbers. 12 divided by 4 is going to be 3. And then I'm going to deal with the x's. I have x to the 6th over x to the 4, x squared. So I'm going to subtract the numbers. So this is going to be a 6 minus 2 as the exponent, which is going to give me a 3x to the 4th. And this is where you may want to pause the video, try it, come back and check your answer. So in the next one, we have 20x to the 9th over 5x to the 4th. We're going to start by dividing our numbers. 20 divided by 5 is 4. And then we're going to reduce our x terms. I have x to the 9th in the top, x to the 4th in the bottom. When we divide and we have the same base, we subtract the exponents. So we're going to get a 5. So our final answer is 4x to the 5th. Okay, next one, we have a power to a power. So we have x cubed, and we're going to raise that to the 4th power. So when we have a power to a power, we multiply the powers together, which is going to give us an x to the 12th. The next one, we have 2x cubed, so we have to be careful here. That 2 is going to be, we have 2x cubed quantity squared. So that 2 is going to be squared, and then the x cubed is going to be squared. 2 squared is 4, and then x cubed squared is going to be x to the 6. We're going to multiply those powers together. So this is where you may want to pause the video, try it, come back and check your answer. So this one, we have 3x to the 4th, and all of that is being cubed. So we're going to write that as 3 cubed times x to the 4th cubed. 3 cubed is 27, and x to the 4th cubed. We're going to multiply those powers to get x to the 12th. So our final answer is 27x to the 12th. Okay, the next one, we have 7 to the 0. We know anything to the 0 is going to be 1. Example 2, we have x to the negative 4. So remember, we're going to view this as a fraction. That's really over 1. That negative exponent just means it's in the wrong place. So I'm going to move that x term down. So remember, there's an understood 1 in front of that x term. So that 1's going to stay there. And then I've got that 1 in the bottom. And this is going to be an x to the positive 4 because I moved it. So this is really just 1 over x to the 4th. Okay, that next one, you may want to pause the video, try it, and check your answer. So we want to simplify 3x to the negative 2. So remember that x to the negative 2, that negative exponent just tells us it's in the wrong place. So we're going to move that x term to the bottom. So it's going to be 3 over x squared. And when I move it, my exponent becomes positive. All right, so let's make these a little bit more fun. Let's say we want to simplify 2x cubed, and that whole thing squared, times x to the negative 4. And we want to write our final answer with positive exponents. So I'm going to start with that first piece. I'm going to have 2 squared times x cubed squared. So I distributed that squared to both of those terms. And that's going to be multiplied by x to the negative 4. 2 squared is 4. X cubed squared is x to the 6. We would multiply those exponents together. And that's times x to the negative 4. And then when we multiply and we have the same base, we would add the exponents together. So that's going to be x to the 6 plus negative 4, which is going to be x squared. So my final answer is going to be 4x squared. Okay, the next one, we have 6x to the 4th, y to the negative 2. All of that's over 3x to the negative 1, y cubed. So we're going to start by dividing. the 6 and the 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2. Now I'm going to start by simplifying these x's. Remember, we're going to subtract. So we have x to the 4th over x to the negative 1. 4 minus negative 1 is a positive 5. And then we're going to subtract the exponents on the y's. Y to the negative 2 over y cubed. It's going to be y to the negative 2 minus 3. Negative 2 minus 3 is a negative 5. And then we're going to simplify that y to the negative 5. To make that a positive exponent, we're going to have to move that y term to the bottom. So my final answer is going to be 2x to the 5th over y to the 5th. For the next one, we have 4x squared y to the negative 3 over 2x to the negative 1 y squared. I'm going to start by working, and all of that's to the negative 2 power. I'm going to start by working this inside out. So we have 4 divided by 2, which is going to be 2. And then we have x squared over x to the negative 1. So we're going to subtract the exponents. 2 minus negative 1 is a 3. And then we have y to the negative 3 over y squared. When I subtract those exponents, negative 3 minus 2 is a negative 5. And all of that's to the negative 2 power. So now we're going to distribute that negative 2 power to all those terms. So I'm going to have 2 to the negative 2 power. I'm going to have x cubed to the negative 2 power. And I'm going to have y to the negative 5 to the negative 2 power. So we're going to have 2 to the negative 2 power. And I'm going to leave it like that for now. I have x cubed to the negative 2 power. When we use our power to a power rule, we're going to get an x to the negative 6 because we're going to multiply. Y to the negative 5 to the negative 2 is going to become y to the 10th. So I have 2 to the negative 2 times x to the negative 6 times y to the 10th. So now anything that has a negative exponent is going to move. So I'm going to have that 2 to the negative 2. That's going to move to the denominator. And when it moves to the denominator, it's going to be a positive 2 on it. That x to the negative 6 is going to move to the denominator. So now it's x to the positive 6. And the y term already had a positive exponent, so it's going to stay in the numerator. And I'm just going to simplify that number. 2 squared is the same thing as 4. So my final answer is going to be y to the 10th over 4x to the 6th. So this is where you may want to pause the video, try it, come back and check your answer. So in this one, we have a numerator, 8x to the 5th, y to the negative 2, z squared, over denominator, 4x to the negative 2, y to the 6, z to the negative 8. And that whole fraction is raised to the negative 3 power. Again, I'm going to start by simplifying inside first. 8 divided by 4 is 2. I'm going to subtract the exponents on the x. 5 minus negative 2 is a 7. Subtract the exponents on the y's. Negative 2 minus 6 is negative 8. And then z's. 2 minus negative 8 is a positive 10. And all of that's raised to the negative 3 power. So then I am going to distribute that negative 3 power. So I'm going to have 2 to the negative 3 times x to the 7th to the negative 3 times y to the negative 8 to the negative 3 and z to the 10th to the negative 3. So 2 to the negative 3, I'm just going to leave that for now. We're going to move it to the proper place before we simplify it. So x to the 7th to the negative 3, we're going to multiply the exponents to get a negative 21. Y to the negative 8 to the negative 3 is going to be y to the 24th. And then z to the 10th to the negative 3 is z to the negative 30. Anything with a negative exponent needs to move. So my 2 to the negative 3 is going to move to the denominator to become 2 cubed. My x term is going to go to the denominator, and my z term is going to go to the denominator. The y is going to stay in the numerator because it already has a positive exponent. So then we're just going to simplify That 2 cubed is 8. So my final answer is y to the 24th over the denominator 8 times x to the 21st times z to the 30th. So this is where you may want to pause the video, try it, come back and check your answer. So in this one, we have the fraction 12x to the negative 3, y to the 4th, z to the negative 5 over 3x squared, y to the negative 1, z cubed, and that whole fraction is raised to the negative 2 power. Again, I'm going to work inside out. 12 divided by 3 is 4. When I subtract the exponents on the x's, negative 3 minus 2 is a negative 5. Subtract the exponents on the y's, 4 minus negative 1 is 5. And then on the z's, negative 5 minus 3 is negative 8. And all of that's raised to the negative 2. So from there, we're going to raise each term, each of those pieces to the negative 2 power. So we're going to have 4 to the negative 2, x to the negative 5 to the negative 2, y to the 5th to the negative 2, and then z to the negative 8 to the negative 2. And then I'm going to simplify my variable terms. I'm going to multiply the exponents together. So I'm going to end up with x to the 10th, y to the negative 10th, z to the 16th. And now we're going to move things that have negative exponents. So the 4 has a negative exponent, and the y has a negative exponent. They both move to the denominator. The x's and z stay in the numerator. So my final answer will be x to the 10th, z to the 16th, over 16 y to the 10th.